The last words anyone ever heard from Brandon Swanson were just two simple words. "Oh shit!" Seconds later, the call disconnected. Despite one of the largest search efforts in Minnesota history, Brandon was never found, and to this day, nobody knows what happened that night. Brandon Swanson was a 19-year-old college student from Minnesota. Friends described him as responsible, friendly, and easygoing. On the night of May 14th, 2008, he was driving home after spending the evening with friends. It should have been a normal drive. He knew these roads. He had driven them many times before. Just after midnight, Brandon was driving through the Minnesota countryside. The roads were dark and mostly empty. At some point, his Chevrolet Lumina drifted off the road and slid into a ditch. Fortunately, he wasn't injured, but the car was stuck. Alone in the darkness, Brandon realized he would need help getting home. Brandon called his parents. He told them he was okay. He explained that his car was stuck and asked them to come pick him up. Confident that he knew where he was, Brandon gave them directions. His parents immediately got into their vehicle and started driving toward him. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but when his parents arrived near the location Brandon described, they couldn't find him. Brandon told them he could see lights in the distance. His parents flashed their headlights. Brandon searched the horizon. Somehow, neither side could see the other. The longer the conversation continued, the stranger the situation became. It was as if they were looking from two completely different places. Later, investigators discovered an important detail. Brandon wasn't where he thought he was. He had accidentally misidentified his location. In reality, he was nearly 25 miles away from the place he had described to his parents. Everyone had been searching in the wrong area. Neither Brandon nor his parents knew it at the time. While talking on the phone, Brandon decided to start walking. He believed he was heading toward a nearby town. For nearly 45 minutes, he stayed on the line with his parents. During that time, he crossed fields, gravel roads, and uneven farmland. The moonlight provided only limited visibility. Around him, there was almost nothing except open land and darkness. As Brandon continued walking, his parents listened carefully. They could hear him moving. Occasionally, they heard sounds from the fields around him. Nothing seemed unusual. Brandon sounded calm, tired perhaps, frustrated certainly, but not afraid. Then, suddenly, his voice changed. Without warning, Brandon stopped talking. There was a brief pause. Then he said, "Oh shit." It was the last thing anyone ever heard him say. The words were short, almost instinctive, as if he had suddenly seen something or stepped somewhere he didn't expect. The phone call ended immediately afterward. His parents kept calling back. No answer. Again and again they tried. Nothing. Brandon had vanished. The young man who had been speaking with them just moments earlier was suddenly gone. Search teams arrived quickly. Police officers, volunteers, tracking dogs, and helicopters searched the area. They covered miles of farmland, rivers, roads, and fields. Searchers worked for days, then weeks. Investigators followed every lead they could find. Yet, despite enormous efforts, no trace of Brandon was ever found. No confirmed sightings, no evidence explaining what happened. More than a decade later, the disappearance of Brandon Swanson remains unsolved. Some investigators believe he may have fallen into a creek or river hidden in the darkness. Others point out that no conclusive evidence has ever supported that theory. What caused Brandon to say those final words? What happened immediately afterward? And how could someone disappear without leaving a trace? To this day, nobody knows. The mystery of Brandon Swanson remains one of the most haunting unsolved disappearances in modern American history.